give a little, just a couple of notes on the chamber world. So I think I know most of you on here. If not, I'm Diane Schultz. I'm the Executive Director of the Boone County Chamber. And as I said, Lexi Britt is our Membership and Marketing Coordinator. And we're excited. You know, we were able to have a hybrid awards ceremony. I know several of you are on this call were at that. But we did, that was a hybrid event, and we did that virtual also. So it was great to see all the great things that have occurred through 2020, even though things, like all of you, were doing things differently. And really one of the great things that have come about because of the way we needed to do business was how we would be able to showcase our members through multitude of webinars. All of our members are great experts in their field. So, you know, sometimes it's hard to get everyone at an in-person event, but through virtually, you know, we can still create those connections to let people know what great talented members we have to meet the business needs that they have. And, you know, it's exciting. It's amazing that it's the end of 2020. I don't know about all of you, but I'm so ready for 2021. And hopefully where we're at next year at this time looks much different, you know, than today. But we know we have to take one day at a time. And so people are really looking at different ways to adapt their business models or enhance the way they're doing business. And one of those things most certainly is marketing. And so we're glad you can be with us today to make sure that our members, I know we have for-profit and nonprofit businesses and organizations on this call today, and everyone really needs to know the tools and resources they can to maximize their marketing. You know, people need to know who you are, where you're at, what you do in order to do business with you, if it's a product or service, or if you're a nonprofit organization, you know, they need volunteers, they need donors, they need people to support their mission. So thank you for joining us today. And if I don't see or you in person or virtually before next year, remain safe and healthy, and everyone have a great holiday. And again, thank you, Amanda and your team for being a part of this today. Lex, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, like Diane said, thank you all for being here today. Raj and Amanda are going to do such an awesome job on demonstrating and showing us how we can emerge stronger in 2021. So a few of the things they'll be covering today is how marketing can help your company or organization with changing customer experience, resetting marketing strategy, improving employee relationships, and adjusting disrupted supply chains. So I think it's going to be a really informative webinar, and I'm excited to hear it. So without further ado, Amanda and Raj, you have the webinar.
Thanks, Lexi. I appreciate it. And thank you, Diane, also for allowing us to speak to your group today. I recognize a couple of names, so I've been on these webinars before, so welcome back. For those of you who haven't been on with us, I am Amanda Cook, and I am the Marketing Director for And Marketing. We are an outsourced marketing department for growing businesses who are looking to expand their reach, bring more awareness, increase their lead generation, and build business strategy and marketing strategy around their goals. So Raj, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, you haven't joined us yet, and so we're lucky to have you today.
I have, and it's a pleasure to meet everybody and to be to hang around the Boone County Chamber. So as Amanda said, my name is Raj Kapoor, founder and managing director of And Marketing. So I started the company about 3.5 years ago. You know, I'm an Indy native. I don't live in Indy anymore, but Amanda sort of runs the Indy-based team. I live in the Philadelphia area, but it's always good to be back to Indy, whether that's in person, which I would sincerely prefer, or it's virtually being back in the Indy area, which is very nice too. So it's good to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
Thanks, Raj. Do you want to kick us off with the icebreaker?
Absolutely. So, so everybody on the webinar, this is highly interactive and totally questions based. So this is not a one way we talk at you and we try to teach you some stuff. We really want you guys to get something out of this. And for us, that's primarily through participation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have everybody participate in the icebreaker question. Okay. So after that, you guys are all welcome to use the chat box as much as you want to. So we're going to go through some of the materials, some of the ideas, but it's all really based around this one question. And what are we going to do about our pivoting plan for 2021? So the first thing I want everybody to do is pretend you're in a time machine or whatever you need to be in, and you have 1 minute with yourself almost 9 months ago exactly. So it's hard to believe this thing has been going on for 9 months. But for me, it was March the 12th where everything was normal. And then Friday the 13th, it was like, oh my gosh, worst Friday the 13th ever, right? So if you had 1 minute with yourself and you can't talk personal, it is very easy for us to go on and on about all the personal things. I want to keep this one business. And you have 1 minute to give yourself one piece of advice or one thing you would have done differently if you could speak to yourself 9 months ago exactly. Okay, so grab a notebook. All right, and the very top, I want you to write the one thing you would do very differently, and then be prepared to share that. Okay, and then you're going to use that piece of paper or notebook or whatever you have electronic. You're going to use that throughout. There's some other things we're going to have you guys write down and make notes on. So let's make it a kind of an active session. So I'll get quiet for a minute, which is hard for me to do, but I'll go quiet for a minute. I want everybody to write the one thing they would tell themselves that they would do different if you have 1 minute with yourself regarding your business. And the way you can tell us, if you guys go into the participant screen in the Zoom, the way you can tell us that you're ready is to put your hand up. So there's a little raise hand icon. You can just hit that little raise hand icon. So you guys can see mine, mine just went up. Whenever you're ready, hit that little raise hand icon. And I'm ready because I've done this before and I already know my answer. And again, questions out loud or in the chat are welcome. I saw Diane saying hello to everybody. Everybody's welcome to put in a question, put in a comment, whatever you'd like, it's fine. It's like we got a couple people done. So Diane and Lexi, with your permission, I would love it if people just went around and gave their answers. Again, you don't have to elaborate, just maybe what's your name, what company do you work for, maybe a quick, what does your company do, and then give your answer. Is that okay with your permission? Is that cool? All right, great. So we got a couple people who are ready. Give people a few more seconds here. Here we go. I'm looking at faces. You have your papers out, you can put your hands up. Unless you don't find the little hand thingy, we can work on that too. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'll invite Jessica, Susan, or Laura, either of you three who put your hands up, to go first. Again, just do a quick introduction of yourself. Where do you work? What do you do? And then what would you do if you had a minute with yourself?
Hey, this is Jessica Vondrau. I am with Rundell Ernstberger Associates. We are a urban design landscape architecture firm based in Indianapolis. We do a lot of work in Boone County. I think if I would change one thing or known one thing differently about our business, it would have been investing in like digital assets or our website, making those things more robust.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Thank you so much for the courage to go first, Jessica. Susan, do you want to maybe go first? You're next in line in my in my list.
Sure. I'm Susan Austin from the Humane Society for Boone County. And although I wasn't in my position then, what I wish I had done was initiated our lobby reconstruction immediately so we could have had all this time to figure out what we were going to do instead of, oh, well, we're going to open up the next month. We're going to open up the next month. So
You
I
had
wish I'd
been so busy, Susan. Oh my gosh. The amount of people that have gotten dogs and things like that must have been through the roof, right? It's a great answer.
It
Great
has.
answer. So moved ahead on an accelerated internal construction project to get ready for being busy. That's great. And I think Laura is our third participant. Laura, do you want to go next?
Sure. I am Laura Pennington with Magical Moments Event Planning. And I would have gone back, if I could go back, I would tell myself I need to find a virtual stream of revenue. So that would be what I would have told myself.
Absolutely great answer. Absolutely great answer.
Yeah.
So again, I run a marketing company. For me, I wish I had hired a salesperson. So my answer to that is very clear. So so as maybe two of the three of you said, the explosion in websites, e-commerce, online infrastructure, digital marketing, all those things didn't entirely benefit our business because we certainly had some bumps, but our year sort of went like this, right? And for the times when things were busy, I'm the only salesperson in my little company, or our little company that Amanda and I work at. And so having a salesperson hired then would have paid major dividends when things got really busy. So done that. So it's a great, thank you, Laura. Diane, do you want to maybe share something, or Amanda, do you want to maybe share something?
And Lexi, you can share too if you want. Thinking back, I wish we would have taken some time just to really not jump in and do. But it was important at the time. All of our members needed a lot of resources. So we didn't have time as an organization to sit back and work on a new website because we were just so active in doing. So again, especially on the marketing realm, sometimes it's difficult just to take the time to sit back and really have a plan in place instead of being so reactive all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Take some time and decide what to do and be strategic as opposed to be so tactic and panicked and things like that. I think panic, even in the business sense, besides the personal sense, I think panic was one of the major trends that happened in 2020 because businesses panic, not just people. And obviously people make up businesses. That's true. That's true. Lexi, do you want to add something?
I completely agree with what Diane said. I think we can say that we wish we would have done that, but then what would have happened if we wouldn't have provided those resources to those people? So I believe that we did everything the way we should have done it. As far as what I wish I would have told myself is to buckle up, because this was really, truly not going anywhere for a long while. I had no idea that this was going to last from March to now December and into 2021. That's the one thing I wish personally I would have.
Yeah, I remember we were supposed to be home for 2 weeks. Remember that? And that's what we were told on March 12th. It was like, oh, just be home for a couple weeks, it'll be fine. And then it's like, wait, it's May. That's not 2 weeks. Yeah. Does anybody else want to go? So forget the hand thing. Anybody else think of something or want to share or introduce themselves? There's a half dozen other people on that didn't go.
Yeah, I'll share. Being in the banking industry, obviously a lot of us, my small business owners took advantage of the PPP and the EIDL, and just being able to reassure the business owners that you're going to get through this, and there's going to be a lot of change, and to just really kind of just to Diane's point, just slow down enough to really build the relationships with my small business clients and be a resource for them when things started to go south, and for them to call me more and trust that we have their best interests at heart, help them navigate through this. If I could have known that all of this was going to happen, like all of us, I certainly would have been there a lot sooner if I had known. I was also out in Vegas, turned 40 on the 13th, so the day after the 12th. So I probably would, I know you said keep it business, probably would have convinced myself to visit Vegas maybe on my 41st birthday. So I could have enjoyed it a little bit better. But
Yeah, that's a great one. I've not heard that one yet. That was great, Tim. I appreciate that. Well, quite candidly, on your professional side, I almost changed my banking organization for our business because of the PPP loan and how my big bank just botched it entirely. And I almost switched my banking relationship, and I was like really close to that decision because I was so annoyed at how they weren't serving our needs and being personal, things like that. So,
and that, if any success came out of it for this bank, it was, we were willing to help, when the large banks said no. And, it really gave us an edge to show that we're the kind of bank that we are. So it was
100% good
great.
for you.
You hate to say that it's great, but it was nice to be able to help.
Well, it's absolutely, that's absolutely the appropriate thing to say. You hate to make a silver lining out of it, but as human beings, that's what we have to do, right? So like we just have to try to make the best while being empathetic to the realities of what are happening here. That's great. That's great. Amanda, did you have anything? I realized I invited you then skipped over. Anything to add?
No, I think that we also, on our own company side, I think that we focused really quickly on how we could immediately help all of our clients, which we should have done. But I also think we kind of skipped the hard work of focusing on ourselves as well, on how we were going to weather this pandemic.
Yeah.
And so that's not to say that we haven't survived well, but we did, I think, skip early on that very important step of really taking a good, long, hard look at ourselves and how we could better ourselves during this time to then also better help our clients at the time. I think we weathered it well, but I think that was probably a step that we didn't necessarily take right at the beginning. I think we've done it since then.
No, we didn't. You are absolutely right. That's a great one. That's a great one too. Good, good. Anybody else want to share? Please feel free to interrupt or throw up a hand or things. Let's go ahead and move on. Again, you're welcome to interrupt with a question or a comment and how it applies. Because again, I do want to make this as, or we want to make this as interactive as possible and make sure you get your questions answered. So, what we did, as Amanda said, was we immediately got into research mode. And we said this, one of the things that we know for sure is that change is a constant. There's some pithy quote out there that you can read about, but basically we got into research mode because when a market disruption happens, there are certain things that are for sure, right? For sure, people are going to panic, businesses are going to panic and go under. And so we started really doing some research around what is that going to mean? Part of our research was going out and asking people what their biggest challenges are. So these are polls from the spring. Okay. So what is your biggest challenge post-pandemic? It's like around the summer. And so they really broke it down to those four things. So changing customer experience, resetting a business strategy was number one. Biggest challenge is there's some fundamental changes that are going to happen in my business. How am I adjusting to those? The second one was around my customers' experience changing. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But if you think about the person with whom you do business, their lives are fundamentally changing and their decision-making processes are fundamentally changing. So adjusting to those is really important. Number three is how does it impact employees? So we'll talk about that a little bit further later, but obviously team members who used to be in offices and interacting with each other are now home. Remember the long months all of us went without seeing anybody. Like those are the kinds of things that we didn't really think about then, but really, really were important. And then the fourth one is disrupted supply chains. Again, if you work in a complicated supply chain environment or a hard good environment, having the global supply chain dramatically disrupted made a huge difference for some people. Some irreversible changes that may not be even known about for a long time. The other one, a question we asked that was interesting is how has your marketing approach changed, right? We're on a marketing company. So how has your approach changed? And 42% of people said that they're pivoting spending towards digital marketing. Just in our small survey of 5 or 6 people, 3 people said that, right? Like we're really spending more on digital marketing. Another one generically is increasing their spend, so which might include digital marketing spend. And then everybody else, about half the people said they're reducing their spend or they're not changing their spend or something else. And the message is it's really not a time to focus less on your customers and less on marketing. So the people who are highlighted in those first two are probably thinking about the right way. One of the marketing sort of rules is that when a market disruption happens, the people who come out ahead in that market disruption, that a lead tends to linger longer than the disruption, right? So now is the time to change your mind, change the minds of your customers and your decision makers on how they buy your category or buy from your product or deal with your company. Okay, so let's go to the next page. So the one thing I want to say is the constant that we know about is uncertainty. So the way I think about it is there's two ends of the spectrum. So tomorrow we could get the FDA to approve a vaccine, and the next day 300 million Americans could get it, right? That could happen. On the other end of the spectrum, we could be sitting here in December of 2021 and still not have a vaccine, and it still may not work, and we still may be in this sort of new normal. Let me be very clear. I don't care about politics, and this conversation is not about politics. Somehow this whole conversation got political. But what we know for sure is on both ends of that spectrum, they're probably not exactly going to happen, right? It's probably not going to happen tomorrow, and we're not going to all have a vaccine and be back to normal and be attending Colts games, you know, with the full Lucas Oil Stadium. That would be insane. And it's probably not going to last a year. The answer is it's going to be somewhere in the middle, right? So the fact is we don't know what's going to happen. The more confidence that somebody speaks with their knowledge about what's going to happen, the less confident you should be in their answer, right? Because the fact is you don't know. There's so much out there, okay? What I encourage business owners to think about, and we do this in our business, is to really consider, don't be paralyzed by that uncertainty, but really think about what's going to happen in these two scenarios. So just like we have the piece of paper I got you and you wrote down what advice you'd give yourself at the top, now I encourage you to go and on the next piece of paper is write a big line down the middle. And on one side of that, you're going to write what happens if things go back to normal, right? There is a vaccine. Americans are going to be fine. We're back to work, all that kind of stuff. And then what happens if this is the new normal? Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what that new normal is, what that middle point might be. But that's what I encourage you guys to think about. So like, as you're building your 2021 plan, start to map out what you think that's going to mean to your business. Okay? Amanda, why don't we go to the next slide? So here's a few trends that we found in our research, right? And so some of these are obvious that we all know about now, and some of these are maybe a little bit obvious. I'll spend a few seconds on each of them. I encourage anybody to ask a question or I can go deeper. Maybe you have some pushback, you don't agree with it, that's fine too. Okay. So the first one is consumers are going to have a stronger and longer lasting focus on health and wellness, cleanliness. So seems obvious now, but can you imagine anybody walking around downtown Indianapolis with a mask on March 10th? Can anybody imagine that? No, it would be weird, right? So like now that's a very commonplace thing. I haven't been to Indy in a few months. I hope it's a commonplace thing. When I'm in Center City, Philadelphia, everybody has masks on, right? And so that's just something that is permanently changed. If you've spent any time in Asia, even before this pandemic, mask wearing is extremely common. It's actually considered a sign of being polite, that if you are not well, you will wear a mask so you don't get other people sick. That's just one example about how cleanliness and health has completely changed. Odds are that's not going to change for a very long time. And the way people perceive things, the way that they decide where to go, they decide where to hang out, what restaurants to go to, what events to attend, is really going to be driven around health and cleanliness. Okay. Amanda and I have some clients in the safety industry, and they deal with personal protective equipment. Their businesses have totally changed because people's focus has changed so much, right? The next one is, obviously, people are going to be spending more time at home and be focusing on their home environment. We have some clients in the construction industry, right? They do contractor type of work. Their businesses have exploded because what happens is when everybody's home, you're in your basement, you're looking at this, you're wondering what to do with that wall. It's looking really ugly. It's feeling dated. You're going to go look up on Google what to go do, right? Or you might be thinking about your work from home environment. Home office furniture has completely accelerated. Or you have to teach your kids from school. You became a teacher. You didn't want to become a teacher. Now you're teaching your kids from homeschooling. And so that personal life has totally changed and your space has changed, right? How many people have made a change within their own house to accommodate all of these changes? Everybody has. Like can't imagine somebody who hasn't, right? The third trend is digital will dominate. So just like people talked about, the interesting thing that I used to talk about last year was what I call the Amazon effect. And the Amazon effect is every business on earth, whenever they put up an e-commerce site, their customers are comparing them to Amazon. And what is Amazon? Amazon's an app in your hand where you can type in a few buttons, you immediately get what you want, you click a button and it shows up in your house in 2 days. You know how hard that is for an average business? But that is the consumer expectation now. right? And so now that's the expectation of everybody for all businesses. So when we accelerate our e-commerce capabilities and build websites for clients, we have to think about what are consumer expectations and what does that purchase experience need to look like, right? And so now digital has dominated. It's completely dominated. It's going to continue to dominate. That's a trend that has gotten accelerated by this pandemic. Okay. The other one is an unfortunate truth. Smaller companies are going out of business, right? New partnerships are emerging out of that. So people you thought were competitors could potentially become partners. What is happening to your competitive landscape? Who's gone out of business? Who's accelerated their business? It's amazing to me how few small businesses are even looking at competition at a time like this, right? There's a lot of opportunities out there. There's a lot of partnerships. There's a lot of, I don't know what those could be called in your industry, but there's a lot of those things that are emerging. And then the last one is one we mentioned a little bit earlier. Supply chains are going to continue to be disrupted, and we can almost for sure see an uptick in domestic and local manufacturing, right? Sourcing is going to completely change. We might, in certain pockets of the industry, we're not immediately going to go back from buying from China, buying from Asia, and buying from those other countries. We're going to start buying domestically. Maybe that's going to have a positive impact on the economy, right? So these are some really big changes that are going on in the marketplace. Any questions or comments on that, on how that might pertain to your guys' industries? Cool, we can go on. So as you're planning, so remember we had this this piece of paper that we created where we said we're going to go back to normal, or we're going to go and have a new normal. Here's the four things, the four questions I want you guys to answer as you're thinking about 2021, right? So the first one is, how is your business strategy changing, right? Are you going to have different customers? Are you going to have different fundamental financials? Are you going to have different business level goals? Like, are you really thoughtfully resetting your business strategy based on what you've learned this year? Most people are paralyzed. Most people are saying, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm not going to bother. I'm going to keep doing my same old thing. My warning to you guys is don't do that, right? It's take the time to really think ahead. What's going to be going on? Just because I'm a completely devoted animal lover, Susan, you're top of my screen. And so like the trends towards pet ownership have completely escalated, right? What's going to happen when everybody goes back to work? Like our dogs are going to be depressed because we spend so much time with them now. That's going to completely change, right? So like, as you're thinking about the Humane Society, what are you guys going to do? I'm genuinely curious what you guys are going to do, but like that's type of the thing, think about that. I don't know, Susan, if that sparked a thought.
We have actually been thinking about that because we're a small facility and we rely a lot on foster families to help us. So we have to manage the intake so that we're not overwhelmed and we're not stockpiling animals on top of each other. Yeah. When you were saying that, for our customers, it is an increased need to provide services for them. We've increased our pet pantry tenfold just to provide food so that those aren't taking off their tables to feed their animals in our community. And then we can keep them in the home. So that's part of it, is keeping the animal in the home so it never comes to us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's great. So you guys are thinking about, right? So every business should be thinking about what's going to happen if things go back to normal or if this is the new normal. The second one is your customer experience. So Amanda and I spend an excruciating amount of time either talking about our clients' customer experience or mapping it or understanding it better. And that customer experience is the first time you think about making a purchase or doing something in your category, all the way through interacting with your company, starting to do business with you, all the way through the life cycle of your business. How has that customer experience changed? Right? One thing everybody on this phone can do is call your customers and say, how's it going? What are you hearing? What are you planning for? Right? There's some really basic things you can do just to deepen the relationship, just to understand what they're experiencing. You can never have too much of that. You don't have to hire an expensive marketing company or something like that to go do research when you can just pick up the phone and call people and understand what they're experiencing. So I'd say that's the number one thing people can do. And again, if things go back to normal, how does that impact your business? And if things are like this for a long time, how does that impact your business? I encourage you guys to write a couple notes down.
Yeah, Raj, I was also going to add to this that understanding your customers and knowing how they feel about interacting with you and their perception of you is one of the things I think a lot of companies fail to do because they assume they know. And so it's really going to challenge yourself to put yourself in the customer's shoes and really understand if that's true. Because there are a lot of times when you do this customer research that you find out that you're challenging some assumptions that are not true. And so that's really important. I think it's even more so important, even if you have done this a year ago, you need to probably do it again because your customer experience and your customer perception has probably changed quite a bit over this last 9 months, and their interaction with you and their experience with you is very different than it was a year ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. So any questions around customer stuff? Obviously, Amanda and I are very passionate about it. The next one we didn't talk about, but let's talk a little bit about employees, right? So all of us are on teams, formal or informal. Our little business has always been virtual, 100% virtual, right? And so one common thing I hear, it's a misconception. It's, oh, you've always been virtual. That was no big deal for you. And I said, stop. It was absolutely a huge deal for us because our working lives were fine. We had our home offices and we were used to that. Everything around us completely changed overnight, right? So we weren't adjusting from going to an office and a commute back home, but we were adjusting to our spouses being around us all the time, our children being home from school. Amanda took on the role of a full-time teacher, right? While she's a full-time employee and, busting her butt. So many people's lives were dramatically impacted. One of the starkest examples I can possibly think of is the reasons we were clawing at the walls. Okay. So again, I have 3 kids at home and my spouse. So I was clawing at the walls because I needed to get out of my house and away from them. I love them, but I needed to get out of there. I needed the mental break of just having something different because usually during my work days, it's just me in the house. It's very quiet. I can handle my stuff. But having 3 kids jumping around each other and all going through that was really hard. On the completely other end of the spectrum, we have single people in our businesses, right? And their social outlet is that they go out about, they have social lives and they have friends, but now they're completely isolated. So the thought of doing one more Zoom call for those people is not fun. They wanted to be able to get out. So when we were in lockdown for a very long period of time, that really stressed both groups' mental health. And that was really hard, right? So taking inventory of your employees, checking in on their mental health, giving them options, giving them flexibility, letting them voice their concerns became super important. So my question to you is, in 2021, what are you going to do to revitalize that? Because if you don't, these are the employees that are going to quit for somebody else who does when the economy gets back, right? I've already seen the leading indicators, and that's what I call LinkedIn posts about people posting for marketing jobs, and they are blowing up, right? And so like, if you think your employees aren't looking on LinkedIn or Indeed and you're giving them a bad experience, you're sadly mistaken, because when this economy goes back up, they're going to have their pickup jobs, right? So we spend a ton of time. I don't even know if we do it perfectly. We do it with the best we can, but to talk about flexibility, what do you guys need? How do we cope? We've created teams within our organization that talk about mindfulness, that talk about health and wellness, that talk about all these things that a year ago I would have never thought about, right? And there's probably 20 things we can be doing better. So I encourage you guys to think about, how are you going to interact with your employees if this goes on for a while, or if you end up back at work normal. Okay. And then the last one I addressed a little bit, but the impact of having supply chains, if that applies to your industry, that could be people, that could be material goods, that could be food supply, that could be so many different things that are impacted by a global supply chain. I just heard on NPR a couple of days ago that that there's going to be huge potato shortages. Did anybody else hear about this? There were signs up in the grocery store here locally for me in Philadelphia that we're planning on a potato shortage. And it's because somewhere in the supply chain, something that needs the same input as potatoes, random, right? Something random like that ended up meaning that they got priority over something, and this giant potato thing is ended up happening, right? So that's just one example. I'm not in the potato business, but like, that's just one example. These things are going to become much more commonplace if this goes on a much longer time. Right? So if you're relying on global or complex supply chains, really think about, how does that impact your ability to serve your customers? How does that impact your ability to make products and get the stuff out on time? So there's a lot of thinking to be done there. And anyway, we'll make these slides available just as an FYI. A few of these pages have the read more here. We've written some more in-depth articles on some of these topics. If you're interested, you're welcome to give those a look. Okay. So any questions around that before I hand it back over to Amanda from the group? Any questions or thoughts that might have sparked? Awesome, Amanda, jump in.
I was just thinking, isn't there a whiskey or something made with potatoes, which could be leading to the shortage in potatoes?
I thought of that,
Vodka?
right? Tito's
Right,
is using all the potatoes to make their vodka in Austin, Texas, and that's why we can't have our potatoes. Maybe that's it.
I think it's all those potato chips people are sitting around eating.
All the potato chips. You're right. That's true. That's true. It could be, but there's these random things we hear about. We don't remember. Food's not made at the grocery store, right? Foods are made by farmers and human beings, and that product needs to get to your grocery store. And there's a lot of complexity that lies behind that. So I thought that was a really good example. But yeah, I'm sorry. Back to you, Amanda, or anybody else who might have a question.
We might not have a problem with potatoes because we're closer to Idaho than you are.
That's true. That's true.
All right. Thanks, Raj. So Raj gave us a lot of great information about how this is going to impact businesses in general and businesses overall. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about marketing planning and how this pandemic is going to impact your marketing planning for 2021. So the first one is, so these are just a number of questions that you need to think through. And my advice to you is to write it down, write all of these questions down and the answers, and then use that information to build your plan. So the first one is, do you have 2021 goals and objectives set? And so that's at a business level, because you shouldn't have your marketing team's got their own set of goals. The sales team has their own set of goals. All of these things need to be laddering up to your entire company's business goals. So while marketing might be doing their own things that are marketing specific, all of their activities need to be laddering up to what you want to do with the business. And you should probably have no more than like 3 focus areas. There's some wisdom out there that says something along the lines of, anything more than 3 to 4 goals is probably not going to happen because you're spreading yourself too thin. You're focusing on too many things. So you got to have some focus areas and be able to plan towards those. When you're thinking about your goals, what does that mean? Is that a revenue goal? Is there a new clients and customers goal? Most people, when you ask them what their goal is for next year, it is to make more money. But that doesn't necessarily give you any information about how you're going to do that. So identify if it's revenue, is it get more customers? If you have more customers, that's typically more money. Are you getting customers with larger spends? Is it getting new customers to buy more products? So identify really where that new source of revenue is coming from. And as Raj already told us about starting some contingency planning, like what does it look like next year if this lingers? And what does it look like if things are going back to normal? I say back to normal, but things probably aren't going to go back to normal. So plan for that. And if they do go back to normal, what do you not want to go back to normal? What do you have an opportunity now to change and to move forward with that you wish you could have done when it was normal? So this is your opportunity to kind of revisit what you'd like to change in your business or what you'd like to do moving forward to help you achieve some of your goals. So think about what normal looks like to you and what it might be the new normal when you move forward. How are you going to get there? We talked a little bit about sources of revenue. So are you B2B, B2C? Do you have current products and services, or are you going to have new products and services? Do you have the bandwidth and the resources to come up with new products and services that could lead to new customers or new industries, new geographies, things like that? And think about some other variables. Raj mentioned a little bit earlier about sponsorships or partnerships. Maybe there is a way for you to partner with a company that can drive more value, more benefits, more customers. So think about how you're going to get to those new sources of revenue or how you're going to increase that revenue. Also, has your competitive landscape changed? So some of the things that when you think about competitors, think about your traditional competitors, and maybe now you have some non-traditional competitors, people who weren't in your space before now, people who are maybe digital only or digital native companies that didn't exist prior to the pandemic. So think about your competitive landscape, take a minute to really outline those, list them, identify those, and think about people who might not have traditionally been your competitor, but they are now. And think about how your customers are interacting with them. So we talked a little bit earlier about how important it is for your customers for you to understand your customers, but think about how your customers are also interacting with your competitors and what their experience is like with your competitors. So understand how that's changed and understand how that might be moving forward. Raj, do you have anything to add to these things so far?
No, I think you've done a great job. I think what I would probably say very few smaller businesses do is number 3, how will you get there? There's a company we've been working with for about 2 years. And until we started working with them, they used to have a goal. It was called the 10% goal. And we used to laugh about it because we want to grow 10%. But then whenever you asked how you're going to grow 10%, they wouldn't have an answer. It wouldn't be through new customers, new industries. It wouldn't be through pricing. There would be a mystery. And the goal would be thrown out there like some sort of a North Star to achieve with no substance behind it. So really think about how you're going to go do whatever you think you want to go do. And so one of the exercises you can do is a math exercise to say, here's where we are today. Our business is, for us, it's like 25% is B2C, 75% is B2B. These are the places we get that revenue. And then if we want to grow X%, well, that's going to come from these areas, right? So to actually map that out is a extremely valuable exercise, right? It really forces you to think through and develop a strategy. So I'd say number 3 is an area, just really spend some time thinking about if you have the time.
Awesome. So once you've made it this far, what kind of things need to change? So you can take a look, you can do your own research. There's market research, looking at your target markets or your messaging, sit down and do a SWOT analysis for where you want to be next year. What are the strengths and weaknesses of your business and your organization, and what opportunities do you have and the threats that are in place that will prevent you from reaching those goals next year. So really understand what those are, and then how you can either adjust them or work around them or find a way to fix them. And be creative and thoughtful about that, and be honest with yourself about what that looks like. And of course, that is establish some SMART goals. That's really right what Raj was just mentioning. Like, they have a goal of 10%. Okay. By when and by how and by how much, that sort of thing. So it's really important to establish some SMART goals: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. Their Harvard Business Review did a study, and they said that if you write it down and you're specific and you have intentionality about it, then you are 2 to 3 more times likely to actually do it, because you're holding yourself accountable and you're holding everybody else accountable because you've been very specific. It's like saying, I'm going to go to the gym every Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And that makes it easier for you to actually go to the gym every Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So it's really being specific and measurable about your goals and being smart for 2021. And then once you've got to that far, you need to think about what you need to do. So, outlining what you have in place and what you need to in order to achieve them. So whether that's, creating additional content, it's reviewing your messaging, looking at your website and what you want to accomplish with it. Is your website really accomplishing your goals? Is it really driving activity or driving engagement that's going to lead to what you're trying to achieve? Maybe it's optimizing your digital advertising and making sure that is really being effective and efficient, and you're using best practices around that. And then improving your reputation online and offline, thinking through those things. So it's really taking an audit of what you have and what you need in order to get there. So again, it's a very simple task, is really just creating a list of what you have and what you're missing, and then setting the stage for creating those things. One of the things that I always like to ask Raj, and maybe he'll share that with us, is you know, I think what's the hardest part about actually setting goals for your company?
That's my question. You're asking what's the hardest part? I would say
Yes.
is the realistic part.
Right.
So like setting the goal is one part, but when you're setting a goal, you want to make it aspirational enough that it hits your goals or does whatever you want it to do, and you want people to get a vision from it. But then actually enabling the team to make that realistic, that's hard, really hard. So I'd say that's the hardest aspect of goal setting. I don't know if anybody else has another opinion. There's obviously a lot of other business owners on the call.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Thinking about my particular business, we have several partners who would be engaged in the planning efforts and the goal setting. What is maybe some advice that you would give for, going through this process digitally, virtually? Whereas, before the pandemic, a lot of these conversations would have been had in person and maybe a lot easier. Do you have any advice for that?
I'm happy to go, Amanda. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that they're the partners that you're referring to have somewhat strong opinions that might not always agree. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Because with Kumbaya, there's no big deal, right? So to do it virtually certainly adds some challenges. And one of the challenges with working virtually in a disagreeable environment where people are encouraged to disagree and you want some level of conflict is that tools like Zoom force people who speak louder and dominate conversations to dominate those calls. So I'll pick on myself. I tend to talk a lot and I'm loud, right? So I tend to dominate those types of things. So one of the things I do is try to silence myself and make other people speak. So it becomes really difficult because of that. What I would encourage you to do is have an independent arbiter be a facilitator. So again, we don't do everything perfect, far from it. But one thing that we're doing is our 2021 planning right now as a team. So our leadership team is, 5 or 6 people. And what I purposely did was I took myself out of my role as the business leader and I made myself the facilitator. And at the beginning of the session, I told everybody, I am not participating in this session. I am just taking notes and helping us get to the answer. Now, at the end of the day, I probably have a vote somewhere in there because I run the company, but my role as a facilitator was to make sure every person got heard and that we took the areas where we quickly agree on those. And then the areas where we disagree, we create a forum to hear each of the sides out and come to a conclusion. So if you've got a large group of people that are clashing and conflicting, you have to encourage that, because if you keep having the conflict and you never resolve it, you're never going to get anywhere. And I found having an independent arbiter who doesn't take a side to really draw that stuff out. So that could be somebody inside your company, certainly. It could be somebody outside your company. You could do that a myriad of different ways, but I'd say that's the number one best way to do that, is to set the session specifically and have somebody independently do that. Number 2, another idea that I've done very successfully or heard about very successfully is don't put people on the spot to make decisions and provide inputs. Make them do that before the session. So have that independent facilitator or independent arbiter provide the questions beforehand. Make people submit the questions beforehand, have that person look at the answers, and then their preparation is, I'm going to bring some of those issues, lay them on the table, and the areas where there's no debate, we're going to very quickly move past those so we can focus our time on that. I think the third thing I would probably say is keep the sessions relatively short and do multiple, because you can do a one-day in-person session, that's no big deal. But doing a one-day Zoom session is virtually impossible. So break it up into 3 or 4 sessions. So those are the 3 that come off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was going to add too, and just speaking from our own experience going through this right now with our company, because I am probably one of those louder voices in the room. And I think that it's really helpful when we ask people to do their homework and come with their own opinions already formulated, because as Raj mentioned, we can line them all up, and maybe that's 4 or 5 different people, but we can line them all up and see where we all agree and easily make those decisions. And then we can actually have a conversation around the things that we don't agree on or the things that need further clarification on. Because I think that that allows us to see everybody's opinions and see things from different perspectives than our own. But asking people to do that hard work beforehand and being able to formulate their own conclusions before we get together in a room is really helpful.
Yeah. One thing, so there's an author and a pretty famous business sort of guru named Ray Dalio, and he wrote a book that is just amazing. It's called Principles. You guys may have heard of it on social media or whatever. One of the things he advocates for is to force everybody to come into a session like that with the attitude that the goal is to come up with the best idea, not to win. Quite often people, especially more senior people with very strong opinions, come in with the goal to win and have their ideas win. But actually the goal is to come up with the best idea, even if that's not yours. That one line fundamentally changed the way I approach all of those interactions. So setting the ground rules, I think, is also very important. So we just, gave you 4 or 5 things there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions from folks about marketing planning in 2021 or anything like that?
So I'm going to open this up to the group. So what do the following companies have in common? Uber, Airbnb, Slack, Pinterest, WhatsApp, Square, Venmo.
It's an open door, and here's what I'll do. I've done this 5 times and nobody has ever gotten it right. So I will mail you a $25 Amazon gift card if you get this answer correct.
Anybody willing to jump up and answer?
The only thing I can think of, which they're all different, but they all provide a solution to some sort of need.
That is true, but not the answer we're looking for. That is absolutely true, but not the specific answer we're looking for.
My guess would be that they're all apps.
That is also true, yet also not the answer we're looking for.
I would say that they all went through the same pandemic we did.
Who was that?
Tim.
Tim, shoot me a Slack or shoot me a message. You're getting a $25 Amazon gift card. So all of these companies were started in the ashes of the 2008 financial crisis.
Oh.
So the real question, and who's heard of any of these companies? Slack just got bought for $27 billion, and it did not exist 12 years ago. Okay, so the real last question is, what are you guys in your businesses going to do about that? Because the opportunities are everywhere. Somebody's in their garage thinking of the new greatest thing, and 12 years from now, they're going to get sold for $27 billion. Right, so Tim, seriously, you can find my email on the invite or get it from Amanda, and I will send you a $25 gift card. You are the first person to get that one in probably 5 of these talks that I've done.
I'm floored. It was just a funny response that actually was, hey, I'll take it.
Exactly right, right? The whole point of this is that businesses are formed, fundamental business shifts are formed during market downturns, and that's what we're in right now. And most people are so panicked about being in the downturn that they don't realize what comes out of it. So I think you're also the one, Tim, that said that apologized for finding the silver lining in the downturn, but like these companies didn't apologize, they were inventing, right? So really think about that. It's a great answer. It's a great answer. Awesome. So if we have 1 more minute, I have a favor to ask of you guys, okay? So our pandemic pivot, so our and marketing pandemic pivot was an education program. So we are asking your help to find what we call solopreneurs, 1-person marketing departments, or multi-level marketers, okay? So this fall, what we did was we ran a pilot on an education program. It's specifically for people who are in these areas who want to learn how to do marketing themselves, not hire a company like me and Amanda run where we do the marketing for you. So it's people who want to be educated on how to do it. Okay, so you get education materials, access to approachable experts like me and Amanda. There's about 6 or 7 of us. A community that's online where you can ask questions and interact with other like-minded professionals. And you actually build your marketing program with us in an 11-week period over 3 months. Okay, so here's a couple quotes on the right-hand side from people who went through our pilot and benefited from it. And then on the next page, Amanda, I'm going to drop this into the chat. And on the next page, there's a little bit more information. So how it works is you get weekly live webinars, not too dissimilar from what we're experiencing right now. There's a bunch of best practices, tips, tools, templates, and things like that. There's live and asynchronous learning. And then after the first 3 months, the community is still there, the materials are still there, and we continue to refresh it. And on the bottom left, those are some of the topics that we cover. So getting a clearer marketing strategy, refining your messaging, creating and distributing your content, improving your website and SEO, social media, PR, and things like that. Okay, so the favor we have is if you know people that this might be a great fit for, we would really appreciate it if you made them aware of it or let us know of any questions. So on that website, that andmarketing.mykajabi.com, that's our homepage for what we're calling And Marketing You. And we would be honored if you share this with people in your network that might find that very interesting. Okay, any questions from the group? Amanda, I don't know, back to you, or Diane, back to you and Lexi about anything on your mind or questions from the group. We're happy to stay on. I know it's about 4, so people may need to run, but we're happy to answer questions or anything.
Yeah, I encourage anyone on here today, jump right in and feel free to ask any questions before we wrap up. We'd be happy to share this for others that haven't been able to be on this webinar today. One, send us the recording, but if you have some kind of just a one-sheet digital marketing on the marketing, I wrote it down, the And Marketing You. We have lots of businesses that, I know as an organization, one of our really the resource that we is most challenging for us is time and people as running an organization. So we know that, there's a lot of people that are very small businesses or maybe doing it all themselves. And, some most certainly benefit from having you and your team do that for them. But I love that you're equipping them with the tools to really have some professional development and be able to do that, to the best interest of their business. So thank you for that. As a chamber, we are continuing to look for ways for professional and personal development, and this most certainly is great. So if you have information, Amanda, send it to us. We can send that to our entire, membership contacts, and then they can get in touch with you. That is a benefit of, your chamber membership. And we most certainly appreciate all you guys do, to help our members as a member yourself. We love when we can connect those members together also. So I already have a note for a couple of people that I'm going to reach out to and let them know about that opportunity. Lexi, do you have anything less to add?
I don't think so. I think this is really informative and I took notes and I'm ready to emerge stronger. So thank you guys for being here.
I love the idea of the only 3. As the chamber staff is small for sure. It's just Lexi and myself, and a lot of times my 3 becomes much greater than those 3 goals. So I think, that was a reminder to not only take those 3 goals, but start with 1 and see it to completion. If it's something that can be completed before you add on to it. I know, we all have so many things that need to be done, and, most certainly want to make sure we're providing as much as we can as an organization or for-profit business, but being able to kind of narrow in and be able to, cross those off as being those goals that are accomplished. Before I add something else to Lexi's, right?
Yeah, and when I mentioned 3 goals, I think it's really important that people don't get goals confused with activity, because, you can have these broad goals that are very specific and measurable and important to your business. And then the activity that you're doing is all feeding all of those goals. So obviously you're going to have more than 3 activities that feed 3 goals. So like, you know, but make sure your goals are broad enough and measurable enough and important enough that's really going to drive business and drive your company for the next year. Oh,
Tim, I think you might be muted. It doesn't say you are, but we can't hear you.
Any better?
Yep.
There you go.
Perfect. So what I was going to say is I think 2021 is going to be the year of innovation. And, you know, a lot of people in 2020 have really slowed down, Diane, to your point, where it's helped people to reflect on current business and, you know, what they want to gather. And I think as a country and as a world, we all have just been kind of spinning our wheels and have kind of neglected to just do some of the reflection that we all need to do. So I'm really looking forward to 2021 with a positive outlook. And, you know, I think this was a really good exercise and seminar to kind of go through and, you know, re-energize myself to start setting some of these goals. So thank you both.
Thank you for the feedback, Tim. And I just sent you a message with my email address. I promise I'll get you the Amazon gift card if you email me your address. No problem.
Got it.
I'm serious about my promises.
All right, well, we want to be mindful of everyone's time today. So please, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you don't have our information, it's on the deck, but you know, if you need it, Diane and Lexi, they both have it and we'll share it with you. But happy to answer any questions or anything else you guys need. But like I said, I want to be mindful of your time today and make sure that we're letting you get to what you need to do.
And we will share this on our newsletter next week. So make sure you look for that newsletter, and then that will be uploaded on our YouTube channel too. We have, you know, our webinars listed on there because I know there's so many times where you're like, what did they say about that? And so it's great as a resource, or, you know, if you're in the marketing role for your company and you'd love to be a part of, you know, the and marketing you, send this to, you know, those decision makers in your company and, you know, express your interest that you'd like to be a part of that resource.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Diane. I appreciate it.
Thanks guys. Thanks, Raj.
Thank
Very
you. It's a great
informative.
class.
Seeing you again.
This was
It was a
really
pleasure
good.
meeting everybody. Thank you guys so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.